As we draw closer to the 2025 NFL Draft, player stocks always fluctuate. On today's episode, we're going to talk about why Washington State star wide receiver Kyle Williams, his stock should be up. That and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. I'm an offensive draft analyst with Bleacher Report. That's my guy, Keith Sanchez. He's the director of scouting with the Draft Network and 2019 national champion with those LSU Tigers. And as always, thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Sorry for being our everydayers, guys. We got a fun one for you. Stock up. What prospects that we believe, not what we've heard or NFL teams that are rumored. No, what prospects we believe stocks should be on the rise. What prospects we believe stocks might be dropping down a little bit, and then those coach them up prospects. But before we get into that, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Stock up, Keith. And like I said, this isn't the NFL's higher on this guy. No, guys that we believe stocks should be on the rise or trending upward, Keith. I go to wide receiver from Washington State, Kyle Williams, and a guy that there was a report that he, I think, did a top 30 visit or a visit with the Tennessee Titans. And for those people who don't know, Tennessee's probably going to be selecting Cam Ward, quarterback out of Miami, who was also the former quarterback at Washington State with Kyle Williams. When I look at Kyle Williams, I think he ran like a 4.41 at the combine with his 40-yard dash. This guy has good. He knows how to run routes. He separates well, catches the ball well, good body control, high football IQ, plays all three wide receiver positions. Do I think he's going to be an X in the NFL? No, I think he's going to be more of a Z guy that moves into the slot, play the Z role, things like that. But he can kind of live in that realm of being a chain mover, but also an explosive after the catch or just rack threat. You know what I mean? I think an NFL offense that wants to get him the ball in the quick game and then get those kind of what I call manufactured with the right spacing and route concepts, manufactured run lanes. After the catch, he catches a slant and you got clear outs. He's got the speed to take it the distance. And I think this is a guy that can create not just against man-to-man, but you're talking about beating zone coverage, things of that nature. I do want to see him consistently work on just his release package and things of that nature. Just continue to add more to it so you're not predictable against, because, one thing that we know about NFL defenders and corners, they study what you do. And if they know it's just a one-step jab, speed, release, inside and out, they know that they can quickly kind of shut that type of stuff down, squeeze you to the sideline if you're on the outside. But I think this is a guy that could be a first down chain mover, but also give you a lot of big plays and generate those big plays after the catch.
No, I'm glad you mentioned him, DP, because I don't think he's getting enough credit as a wide receiver, right? And being a savvy route runner and knowing and just kind of understanding the game. I watched a little bit of him right before the Senior Bowl, but then at the Senior Bowl, I was impressed with him. I thought he was one of the more consistent wide receivers, from rep to rep, right? He won a lot of his one-on-ones, even, watching him in 7-on-7s and team drills. Like, I was just impressed with his movement skills. Do I think he's a guy that is going to overpower people with any sort of physical trait? Nope. But I think he's going to get the job done. And remember around this time, DP, there was a lot of talk about Jalen McMillan and Jalen Polk. And I know a lot of people are higher on Jalen Polk. But remember, DP, I was like, I like Jalen McMillan a lot. Yeah. Like, he just understands how to get the job done. I feel maybe not to the same tier, but I have the same vibe with Kyle Williams that I think he's going to come in under the radar, potentially go to a really good situation. Some team potentially draft him in the third round and then going to be happy with him, right? Like another team that I think can take a swing on him. We talked about them on a mock draft podcast, but could he push a Andre Iosivas at Cincinnati to be wide receiver 3, right? Kind of the Jermaine Burton situation. Like I could see him doing some things like that, just being a really good, solid wide receiver 3 for NFL teams.
It's funny when you mentioned the Bengals. I think in my report over at Bleach Report, we had to do comps for every player. I'm pretty sure I comped him as a faster Tyler Boyd, a more juiced up version of Tyler Boyd. And it's like, where if he goes to Cincinnati, you already got T. Higgins who's gonna play the X and Z, both, he's gonna move around. Jamar Chase does the same thing. You slide him into the slot, and he becomes a more juiced up, more explosive version of Tyler Boyd. You know what I mean? And I do think I love the Jalen McMillan call out, because I think, especially when Chris Godwin went down, we saw that Baker Mayfield found a rapport with him, and now they brought Chris Godwin back. Like, stock up for Baker Mayfield, because you got Jalen McMillan to be the third guy that teams they can't focus on. Like, oh, we got to focus on Godwin, we got to focus on Mike Evans. I think Kyle Williams brings that a similar type of ability to a passing attack. And yeah, I like him a lot, man. I think this is a guy 3rd round where you can get Kyle Williams, and you can feel really good about that.
Yep, DP. I'm gonna go with Maxwell Harrison, cornerback from Kentucky. Was a young man that we had scouting meetings right with the Draft Network over during the summer, and I gave him a high 2nd round grade. Right? I was like, hey, I really like this guy. Like, as a zone corner, like, I think he can do a lot of different things: ball hawk, turnovers, everything. Right, quick twitch, explosive. Then obviously he was injured this year, right? And kind of same thing, right? Out of sight, out of mind situation. But then come the combine, I think he ran the fastest for it. I think he was the fastest. I think Matthew Golden was 2nd. I think he was the fastest 40 time at the NFL combine. And so I think that got the name buzzing a little bit. But I think that unfortunately he's kind of known as the fast guy and not, oh wait, this is a really good cornerback. And that's how I feel about him, DP. I think he's really good, and he had a shortened season. I think he only played maybe 4 or 5 games at the very most, right? And it was towards the beginning of the season, so a couple of those may have been cupcakes. But one big data point was he played against Texas. He had to battle Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond and those guys. And I liked what I seen, DP. You could see the makeup speed on film. I think he got beat one time by Isaiah Bond. Then Quentin Ewers, I think it was like a skinny post to the middle of the field, but you could see the speed, the 4.28, because he was able to make up, get back in phase, and deflect the football. So you see it from Maxwell Harrison. I think he's quick twitch. I think he could become more disciplined and man, right? And then the other data point we had was the Senior Bowl, DP, and he had some really solid reps there also. So I look at Maxwell Harrison and the mock we went over yesterday. I put him in the 1st round. I think if you're looking for a corner, I think speed is unteachable. We've seen guys like Garion Conley. I can't remember the young man. I think he kind of phased out of the league, though. He was with the Raiders. There was a run where it was probably.
I know you're talking about.
I can't think of his name. I can't
remember his name, but I know the players you're talking about.
Yeah, like there was a run on Ohio State corners that went right, and they were all around this kind of 5'11", 6 foot range, but they can run. And there was a run on him. I think he kind of fits that mold of those corners that can flat out run. He reminded me of, and I was around this guy in my time at LSU, Dante Jackson. And I think that there's going to be some conversation. And when I say that, people are like, oh, because it's when you bring the player's name up, right? If I brought it up year 3 into his career, everybody would be like, oh, I'm all on board with that, right? But because he's towards the back end of the career, I say Dante Jackson. People kind of like, but I'm thinking about the very best versions of Dante Jackson. I think they're probably very similar. I think from a height, weight, speed perspective, I think they're probably very similar, like both close to 5'11", both close to 180 pounds, and both were really fast. I know Dante was like a 4.3 guy when we was at LSU too. So reminds me of him, where I think he can slide in and be a good number 2 corner. And if he had to be your number 1 in some situations, you feel okay about it.
No, yeah, he definitely a good player. I think Dante Jackson, I think I was on the podcast probably a couple weeks ago, about a month ago, and that was, I think, the name I invoked for Maxwell Harrison was that Dante Jackson. Keep them around this thing out and close out this topic. Jalen Conyers, tight end out of Texas State, 6'3" and a half, 260, 33 and a quarter on the arm. He ran the 4.74, 1.62 10-yard split, 35-inch vert with a 10-1 broad. And we talk about, when we talk about Tyler Warren, when people highlight the things they love about Tyler Warren, it's the oh man, he can play wildcat quarterback. He can run the ball. He can throw the ball. Jalen Conyers does the exact same stuff. Like he does that exact same stuff. I think he's a former quarterback as well that turned into a tight end. So you can run that with him. The problem with him is that like he's a guy that, I think you said him on WTF, watch the film. Like he's a watch the film type of guy because you're not going to look at the statistics and be like, wow, let me grab this guy. He played in some pretty bad offenses. Arizona State for 3 years, Texas Tech. I really wish he was at I advise these pass catches, man, transfer somewhere with a high-profile quarterback. Go somewhere with a quarterback that can get you the rock so you can get the numbers. He's a good athlete. He can stretch the field vertically up the seam, give you yards after catch. He's tough. He's got a good frame and physicality to him in terms of contact balance. I think this guy's stock should be up. In a loaded tight end group, I think he can be a guy that you can have top of the round 4 and feel like, hey, we may have something here if we just work on some minute details.
DP with the pass catchers, man. You bring up Jalen Conyers, you bring up Kyle Williams. I like both of those name pools. But DP, what goes up must come down, man. We have to talk about those players who we're just not as high on, right? Everybody is kind of into these guys, potentially high first rounders, high second rounders, and we just don't see it yet. So we're going to have that conversation next about the guys that we are stock down on coming up next.
There's nothing like the energy of a live game, whether it's catching a last-minute MLB showdown or soaking in the excitement of an NBA matchup, but finding great seats at a great price, that used to be a challenge until I found Game Time. Game Time makes scoring last-minute tickets easier than ever. Prices actually drop as the event gets closer. And with their all-in pricing, you can see the total cost up front, no surprises at checkout. Why do I love using Game Time? Simple. Last-minute deals. Save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, all events near you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's the code LOCKED ON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. What goes up must come down, Keith. It's time to talk about those guys that we believe their stock should actually be trending south, not north. And for me, Keith, I go to Iowa State wide receiver Jayden Higgins. Guy had
that one hurt, DP. That one hurt. Yeah. I didn't know you was gonna say that. Oh man.
Listen,
okay,
I was high on him at one point, Keith, and I think I came into the season, really liked him, and I still do like him, but I don't like him where I'm seeing the consensus starting to like him, Keith. I'm just like, what are we talking about here? Like, yes, he's 6'4", 200 plus pounds. He ran like a 4.47. He jumped well and everything. The combine looked good. His Senior Bowl was a very mixed bag, mixed bag of results. You didn't see a lot of separation at times. He got hung up against press coverage. And then for me, it was like, all right, what we talk about the combine being a data point, going back, looking at the combine, looking at what he did, what he put on as with his testing. I'm like, all right, let me go check the tape again and see if because I didn't see 4.47. So I was like, let me go back, retest my eyes and see if I saw it. No, I did not. I did not see 4.47. And then there was some.
You gotta you gotta adjust your eyes, man. You gotta adjust your eyes. You get the Senior Bowl. You gotta adjust your eyes, man.
Listen. Oh man, I'm not even touching that one. But no, brother. Listen. I really had to readjust my eyes. I'm like, what is? Did I see this wrong? And I was like, no. I went back to the film. I still saw a guy that for the routes he runs, he's a good route runner. You know what I mean? Guy that has a big catch radius, can make plays away from his frame. I think the thing that bothered me with him is that, I think he's going to be a limited route runner. I think there is some rigidness and tightness because he is a taller, long leg receiver. He's very leggy, is what I wrote down when I took notes on him. And you see some of that transition. I watched him against Kansas. And you're watching Kobe Bryant be physical and stick with him, not be afraid of his speed. Melo Dotson, I think, got a pick. He either got a pick or a pick six, shadowing him on the quick sit down route and things of that nature. He tried to, I think, in that same game, he tried to push vertical and run almost like a 7 stop, if I remember the route correctly. and the DB didn't he wasn't worried about his speed at all. And then when he did try to stop, he's a very high hipped route runner too, high shoulders. I just man, I think that, and I put it in my report because I wanted to make sure. I was like, what did I put in my report? And my report said he's probably better suited as a power slot because I don't see him I don't think he's going to create a lot of separation on the outside against NFL athletes. I think those guys are going to be able to take that inside release away, force him outside, arm bar him, squeeze him to the sideline, and kind of cover him. And then it's okay, can you play above the rim? He can. I think there's just inconsistencies there with him as well. I want to see him play as big as his frame is, and sometimes I don't see that on film.
Yeah, so I guess you kind of come in and you feel like that his role is more of a wide receiver 2 than a wide receiver 1, obviously, right?
Yeah, 2,
and
probably 2, 3 for sure.
Yeah, and then I was gonna say that, right? Then depending on situations, maybe a 3 at some point. I think that's fair because I like the points you made about the speed and stuff like that. I didn't know who was faster out of him and Pat Bryant, right? And I think Pat Bryant ran a 4.6 flat, 4.61. Yeah, something like that. And then he ran a 4.4. So definitely play speed, maybe more of a 4.5-ish, right? And
he's a long strider. He's a long strider.
And I categorized both of those guys in the same. I was like, hey, both could be power slots. I need to see who can run, and one-on-ones was important at Senior Bowl. So I don't think that was a bad situation. DP, I'm gonna go with this. Nick Emmanwori. And I don't think we've talked about him too much on this podcast.
I think we do on the safety episode, but
yeah,
that was pretty much about it.
I'm just not as high, DP. I like Nick, and I think the testing was great, right? Explosive athlete. I just don't know if I don't know what positions to consistently put him in it. And I know people talk about him playing the low hole, being a low hole safety. I seen some tackling concerns. I seen him be inconsistent as a tackler too. So I probably have more, or I will have more. I'll say this: he'll be closer to the 3rd round for me than the 1st round for me. I do think he's a solid starting safety. I just think that with the, and that's the context of this segment, right? Or this show is that the context of what his NFL combine testing was, and then being a 1st round prospect. I just don't know that I would take him in the 1st round because I don't know that he checks enough boxes across the board for me.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point, especially with the tackling. I think it's a correctable issue. You know what I mean? Getting him with the right coaches and stuff like that. I think that's really what's going to be the big thing for him. Getting him with a coaching staff that's going to nurture the athleticism and that profile, and getting him mechanically sound because he has the wingspan, the body type to be a tackler and to be a guy that you can rely on, but there are some fundamental missing pieces to his approach. I feel like he doesn't wrap up consistently and wrap up well. I think it's targeting, being he's 6'4", trying to get drop the hips, get the pad level low, finding that strike zone and everything like that. I think that can be a little bit of an issue for him. So I'm not mad at that at all, Keith. I think this is a guy that I haven't late 1st, early 2nd. You know what I mean? I think, you look at a team that he's been linked to has been the Los Angeles Rams, and they have Cam Kitchens, who had a really good rookie season, probably, I think, playing that free safety spot for him when he played at Miami. And then you bring him in as the strong safety, and you play that too high. Both of you got hashed the sideline, responsibilities. Then you can rotate them down, things of that nature. But tackling will be big, and I think that's going to probably be a big coaching point in training camp for him, where it's hey, break down correctly, roll through your hips, wrap the guy up, play to your size. And I think that's going to be just a technical thing for him. He's got to clean that up, because if you can't do that, the size, the athleticism, none of it really matters if you can't make the plays out in space that we need. But Keith, my last guy that I think stock down, and I like him, man, and I know he's got a hive out there. You're talking about the Bay Hive, Beyonce's fans. Ooh, I don't know. Cam Skattebo's fan base is a little rabid, Keith. Cam Skattebo's fan base is rabid. And again, I like Cam Skattebo, but I was not surprised when the 40 time and all that type of stuff from his pro day. I was hoping he would hit 4.55 and be okay, cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you hitting close to the 4.6 and people are starting times it might be 4.7. that's a problem. Like oh no, that's a legit problem, especially when you are a shorter back. He's 5'9", 220, right? Like, and I think the thing that caught people off guard, he jumped 39.5-inch vert at the combine. They're like, oh, typically when guys jump high and show that explosiveness in their jump, they can run. But I'm like, if you watch the tape, he gets hawked down a lot. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, might break that 10, 15, might get you to 20, but he's not hitting that 60, 70, 80 yarder because guys run him down. And I just feel like with him, he's going to be more of a complimentary back in the NFL. The same way people like immediately, I think our guy Eric Crock over at Locked On Niners, when that Xavier Restrepo 40 time came out, he said, oh yeah, no, Big Dog might go undrafted. He said, because against NFL corners, you can't be running 4.7 and be a small dude. Like, that's just really tough to do and be successful with. I think at running back is the same thing. Running 4.6, almost 4.7 at it's different when you're 6'2", 240, right? If you know your boy Ollie Gordon ran a 4.61, he's like 6'2", 230. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like I expect you to run that. You're that big. Like, but when you're 5'9", 219, give me sub 4.6. I need it sub 4.6. I think for him he's gonna be a pass catcher. He's going to run hard. He's going to be a guy that you can tote the rock with. I don't see him being the lead back in the NFL.
Okay. Now, so the comp, do you have a comp? I know, and I know people are gonna go with layups of just Rex Burkhead and things like that,
Yeah.
but
I'm not gonna lie, Keith. I try to stay from the white running back to white running back comps. I try to
yeah, all of them, right? Like
it's
hairstyles and things like that.
Yeah, I'm not. No, I think I comped him to a bigger. I think I was like his ceiling could be a bigger Kyren Williams, where like you need the way Sean McVay bought in the Kyren Williams. The other 31 teams in the NFL, because of his size and lack of speed and explosiveness, you can't expect them to buy in, and they did buy in. I think Kyren was a 5th round pick, right? Mm-hmm. Like, because he didn't test the way people wanted him to, being a smaller back, even though his tape was good. He was the best pass blocker in his class at running back and everything else. So I think for him, if he gets to a situation where a coach and the head coach, the offensive coordinator buys into him, cool. You could probably have that Kyren Williams type of upside as a starter. I just don't particularly see that happening for him.
Yep. With DP, let's do this, man. We bringing back a classic segment. Coach him up, right? We're going to pick the prospect, hand him to the coach, say, listen, this guy has all the physical tools you need. Coach him up. You can turn this 3rd, 4th, 5th round into a superstar. So coming up next, we're going to talk about that prospect that just needs to be coached up a little bit.
Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Coach up. Coach him up, Keith, that these prospects that we got to give to the coaches, scouts, and say, listen, he has what it takes. Now you got to get him where he needs to be. I go to Minnesota offensive tackle, 6'6", 330 pounds with 33 and 1/8 on the arm, Aireontae Ersery. A guy that, Keith, you know, from my, summertime when I was still with the Draft Network, I was high on this dude, and I still am. I think 2nd round, 2nd, 3rd round, you're going to be able to get yourself a more than adequate starter at tackle. He's physical, he's strong, he's got the arm length and everything. What I want to see from him is just a little bit better technique. You know what I mean? Getting him, the knee bend needs to improve. I think his punch timing, and then the level, like when you're 6'6" and you have that big body and you're high off the ground, you got to think about the fact that, like, the Josiah Stewart, like, yeah, you're not going to see many sawed-off rushers at 6 foot, 6'1" in the NFL like that. But those guys that might be 6'2", 6'3", that rush with a low hip level, that have that can get into your pads, his punches can get a little high. So you think about especially, I don't think they call this in college, but you see it on Sundays, hands to the face. I think it's a really stupid call because it doesn't really impact much. But nonetheless, like, you know what I mean? You think about shooting your hands too high against shorter NFL edge rushers, you get a slight hand to the face, you might have scored a touchdown on that play, flag, right? You got to bring your hand carriage down a little bit. His hands are also a little wide, so you don't want to. I saw that at the Senior Bowl, like he would clamp and kind of hug. Bring those hands in a little bit closer. Keep them closer to your midsection so you can strike the shoulder pad and chest area of these edge rushers. And again, I don't think he's going to be the most fluid knee bender, but just work on that a little more. Get your body comfortable so you're not bending at the waist, putting your, especially against NFL edge rushers and in the run game, right? You don't want to be heavy, leaning over your toes, leaning onto a guy, because then all they're going to do is repurpose your weight and pull you forward. And it's like, well, I can discard you quickly. I'm into, like, whether it's an RPO, a play action, or actually run play, I can get to the ball a lot quicker because you're leaning into me and I can use your weight against you. I think he's got some things that you can correct. And I think if so, you got yourself at worst a right tackle that can start in the league 7, 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, I like that you called Aireontae out for the coach him up part, just because I think he's the prime candidate of, I think he enters the NFL as is, as a baseline NFL starter, right? Like, you feel like you can start him right
and
at
feel
for
good,
offensive
comfortable
line
about it. Yeah.
at tackle. Yeah. Now, the coach him up part, and this is the intriguing part, is that if you get the details right, you have a Pro Bowler on your hands, right? And you think about the teams in the back end of the first round, right? Especially the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, do you take a swing on this young man and say, you know what, we're going to roll with it, right? Or everybody's talking about this combination of, the quarterbacks and, like, say, like the Giants and Cleveland, and I'm not going to throw Tennessee in there, New Orleans, right? Like, all of those teams that could take a quarterback at the top end of the first round, those teams that trade up back to the top of the second, right? I think Aireontae is a prime candidate to do that too, right? Like, you feel comfortable with saying, I got this guy in the second round, and you feel good about what his potential could be. So I like him as a good call-out guy. Got DP, the guy I chose for this segment is Georgia edge/interior defensive lineman Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, right? Listed at 6'5", 275, 33.5-inch arms, right? Like, that's part of the measurables. Ran a 4.8, 169 10-yard split, 36-inch vertical, 10-4 broad jump for 275 pounds. So the testing was good, right, for a defensive lineman. Now, the issue with Tyrion is that he's pretty much kind of been a backup, right? You had Jalen Walker, you had Michael Williams, right? It's kind of like the faces of this defense. And Tyron was kind of the rotational guy inside of a scheme that already rotates a lot, inside of a scheme that makes you play 5 different positions. So it was a hard baseline evaluation. I think he's a guy that's fallen under the radar. But when I think of the JT Tuimamalus, I think of guys like that. And when those guys that are 6'5", 275, I think he's in the same bucket with them, right? Where they're going to have some of the same assets, and they're also going to have some of the same deficiencies, right? Like, you're going to have the same question marks about them bending the edge and turning the arc, but you're talking about a strong side defensive end, right, that can set the edge day one. You talk about a guy that can rush to collapse the pocket. You're talking about a guy that you can move inside and out. I think he's a prospect that you say, you know what, if we can grab him somewhere in the top 100, maybe 80 to 100, you can roll with that. And I think about guys that in the past who've went, you think about Zach Harrison, right, who got drafted to the the Atlanta Falcons. And then what was our guy from KJ Henry, who went to the Washington Commanders, right? I think he's in that bucket of, this guy, don't be surprised if you hear his name as a top 100 prospect. Because when you talk about prospects and potential and ceilings, he fits that mode of being a starter for NFL defense.
No, I like that. That's a deeper dive caller, because, like you said, he was a rotational guy, and coming from Georgia, like, the big names, but you don't really see when you hear that name, you're like, I don't even know the face that goes with that guy.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like, people don't know who that is, but having that guy who's, for one, he's gonna come in as a team first guy, because he didn't transfer out. He didn't leave. Like, he stayed, played the role that he needed to play, but he has NFL body, athletic profile, and potential, especially as probably that 3-tech 4-eye with his body type. You can also play him in, I think you can play him as in a 4-man front. You can play him as like a strong side defensive end, a guy that can set the edge against the run, be physical at the point of attack, things of that nature, while you work with him with his athletic profile and wingspan. It's like, man, if we can get some of the mechanical things and technical aspects as a pass rusher to really, like, boost your upside as a 3-down player, you got yourself, you can get a guy like that back in the top 100, like close to the 100. You feel really good about that. It's like, listen, at worst, we have a rotational guy, and at this point, you got people. Teams need to look at what the Eagles have done and say, listen, we need to have as many defensive linemen as possible. Like, we need it, because if you don't have it, like, if you only have 1 or 2 real guys and somebody gets hurt or they need a blow, they need to get some wins, because
like the Lions, right?
Lions
like
too.
the Lions,
yeah.
Yep. Like the Lions, who,
100%.
kind of had one ace. Is like you kind of really need to be able to. The definition, the phrase "rushing in bunches," right? It just fits what the NFL is right now. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast all by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Every listener is greatly appreciated here over at Locked On NFL Draft. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at the Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all can talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you get podcasts, and listen to the latest episode as soon as it is available. On tomorrow's show, we have a fun where we're talking potential hypothetical trades. I got some trades I'm going to throw at Keith and see if he's going to buy or sell that this trade should happen during the 2025 NFL Draft. That and more on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.